area in West Germany. I was brought up with 8 siblings and in the countryside and very strictly, as I said. And I think my first impulse to become someone in the helping profession was because in my family of origin, it wasn't very pleasant to grow up there. It was actually, it was very, very hard. There was a lot of violence. My father was, he was involved in the Second World War, in the Third Reich. He was not, I don't think he was a very active Nazi, but he was a bystander, and he was someone who did what he was told to. And he was in the war, and he came out heavily traumatized, became an alcoholic. He became very violent. So the general tone in my family, in my upbringing, was violence. A lot of physical, emotional, sexual violence throughout my own whole childhood and youth until I left home. And I remember that I decided very early to, when I'm grown up, I want to help people who have suffered in their lives, because I couldn't do much. I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help my siblings. When you're a child, you're just exposed to whatever comes your way. Okay. You can hear me again? Yeah. So I think I decided very early to become a therapist, a helper, someone who helps people who are suffering. And that's what I did. I studied psychology, and in the beginning of when I was having my diploma, I started to train in client-centered psychotherapy, the Rogers approach. And that was very nice, because I really learned to listen to others, to listen to people. And then, more or less by chance, I started working with handicapped children who were mentally and physically handicapped. And I did that for quite some time, about 7 years. And I became specialized in helping autistic children. And this I really loved. But then my mother died. I mean, I really loved my work. I didn't like the circumstances, but I loved the work. But I was also not very aware how I was exploiting myself. Due to my own traumatization, I was kind of doing until the point where I broke down. And my breakdown, my first, came when my mother had died, all in a sudden, from an aneurysma. And I got tuberculosis, which at that time was very unusual, because it was not a disease that was so common anymore. And I had to go to a sanatorium for a couple of months. And during that time, I decided that I will have to change something, because I could also feel that I was burned out. And when I came out of the sanatorium, and I had decided already to study family therapy. And with that decision, I also joined my own therapy. The therapist I found, he was recommended by a friend, He was a great guy, but, and I have to say, but at that time I was quite shocked. I entered his clinic and there stands this tall man with a red maroon robe until his feet. And this was in the early 80s, 1980s, and a mala around his neck. And I became aware that he was a sannyasin, and I was so shocked. I wanted to run out of the house immediately, which I didn't do, thank God, because he turned out to be an amazing therapist. And with him, I started doing a couple of years of therapy, Gestalt therapy mainly, and body therapy. And I became a sannyasin, a disciple of this guru Osho, at that time Bhagwan, which I would say today saved my life. Because what I did learn mostly was to meditate and to find a space inside myself that is more silent and more the observer. And then I started all kinds of therapies and learned all kinds of therapies, primal therapy and so on, encounter therapy, bioenergetics, breath therapy, rebirthing. So I studied a lot of things until I met at a certain point, it was 1995, 95, when I noticed that something else was coming my way. And I didn't know what it was, but then I heard of Bert Hellinger. And I met him and I did a first seminar, and I immediately fell in love with that work. Not with the person. The person, I could separate the person from the work in that sense. And a couple of years later, I met Peter Levine, the trauma therapist who developed somatic experiencing. So that was something that I learned. And then later, no, at the same time, actually, I met an Israeli man, Professor Dan Baron, who also worked with trauma, but in a different way, with storytelling. So I also became friends with him and learned that. So shortly put together, I started working in a completely new way, which evolved with the years. And I developed this training that I call now Heal Your Roots, which deals actually with how we are healing the wounds that we carry from our past, from where we come from. And yeah, today, now at this time in my life, I have my own clinic here in Berlin, and I'm traveling. I travel to Israel since 4 years now and teach my work there. And already we have 4 training rounds here. I teach my work in Berlin, in Germany, and I teach my work in Holland. And I have been teaching in different places in the world, but right now these are the 3 places that I'm teaching in. So I'm traveling a lot. Actually, at the moment, I'm not traveling. I was supposed to travel to Israel on the coming Monday, but due to the Corona time, I cannot do that. So with the Corona, actually, it's a blessing for me that I don't travel so much at this moment, and my body feels quite recovering, because traveling is also demanding on the body. So at this time, I am teaching a lot via Zoom, also sessions and yeah, little groups. I connect with my students via Zoom. We meet on a regular basis, and it's a new experience, and a big part of it is very healing for me. So within this whole development with the Corona, I decided that I want to create an online course, which is an introduction to my work. And this is what I want to talk with you about today, and maybe doing a little, maybe doing a few little exercises, I don't know. So everything is prepared on one hand, but also spontaneous on the other hand. So whatever will develop throughout this time that we spend together will develop. And at the end, let's say the last 15, 20 minutes, I will answer your questions. So whatever questions you might have, personal or professional or about the work, you can write them down in the chat room, which you see down below. It says chat, and you can write your questions, and I will do my best to answer as best as I can the questions that you have. And I also do something now which I hope will work, because I do it for the first time. I prepared a little PowerPoint, so which I will try to share with you now, so that you don't have to look at me all the time, and you can also go with your eyes to another visual. So I will see if it works. Then I open it now. Share. Share. I love it to learn something new. I don't know how it's for you, but for me it's always very nice. I hope you can see this now. Maybe you just, yeah. Okay. Good. So I'll go with you a little bit through this PowerPoint presentation, and along that I will explain where I come from and what this Heal Your Roots is all about. So to begin with, I would like to take a moment that you can reflect on the following themes. In which areas of your life do you feel connected to your family of origin? And what I mean with that is, where do you feel that the way you are living has something to do with where you come from? Like rituals or belief systems or ways of relating to others, ways of relating to yourself, food habits, other habits that you are living by. So, and then while you are thinking of those things, which of those areas support you, where you are connected with your family of origin, and which areas that you are connected with your family of origin are more inhibiting you, constricting you. And while you are reflecting on those areas, just notice any thoughts, any emotions, any body sensations connected to each point. And if you want, you can even make a few notes. So take a few moments to notice.
Sakino, we see a white screen only.
You see what?
White screen.
Hi, you see
That's a white screen. There's a
white screen. You don't see the PowerPoint?
No.
No.
Oh, That's too bad.
This is so weird.
How can we change that? Yours. I am screen. It says I'm screen sharing. And it worked before. Okay. And you, okay, I stopped it now. So you also couldn't see me? You only saw a white screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I can see you, but when you turn the screen sharing, then it's
there
now
we
it's
are.
Now
okay.
we see it.
Now it's working?
Yeah.
Yes, the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, now I go back to the questions so you can see them again. So where do you feel connected to your family of origin, in a supportive way or in a constricted way? And notice any thoughts, emotions, and body sensations connected to each point. So just take a moment to do that.
Some stuff. You're doing the course, no? Yeah, but yeah. So, in which areas of your life do you feel connected to your family of origin?
Because we all are reflecting and living things that we learned in our family of origin. And some of the things are supporting us in who we want to be, and some of the things are rather limiting us. And it's sometimes it's nice to just become aware of those things, and also about the body sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts that are going along with those things. Now, the next screen shows photos of myself from when I was a baby until the age of my, I think, mid-20s and 20s. And I chose those photos because my own impression of how I looked and how I was looking into the world and how I was connecting and bonding with others strongly reflect in my understanding and how I see those photos, how fearful and how afraid I was. When I look, do you see my cursor? I don't know. When I look at this photo, for instance, it's on the above line in the middle. It's a photo of me on my first school day, and when I look at that photo, I get really sad, because I remember and I noticed how scared I was, how the aliveness was already beaten out of me. And my connection to others and to myself was fearful. I was always afraid to do something wrong. I was always afraid to get hurt. I was always afraid to get beaten up. And then when you see the photo on the lower left side, that's a little rabbit I'm holding in my hands. And I can see that that was a way I could bond and connect with animals, small, cuddly animals. That was possible. And then when you see the middle photo on the lower line, I was very restrained, very held back. That was in the kitchen corner of our kitchen. And I was always kind of hiding myself and not really open. So this is what I mean, that family influences how we look at the world, how we look at ourselves, how we look at life, how we connect and bond with others and with ourselves. So Our family of origin shapes who we become later in life in all areas. Even when the values which we grew up with are not supporting us anymore or are even destructive, we are loyal to those values, unconsciously loyal. I don't know if you know, sometimes or often when you are like in all those therapeutic and coaching groups and individual sessions, when we try to create new goals in our lives and we want to go develop something in our lives, and then many times we cannot really reach that, and something inside of us sticks against it, doesn't allow us to become who we want to become. And this is because we are loyal to those values. And why are we loyal to those values? Those loyalties are invisible. And there is a psychologist who has researched a lot about this invisible loyalties. His name is Ivan Boschomeny-Nage. And why are we loyal? Because this guarantees our attachment relationship to our family. And as children, we are dependent on those attachment relationships. We are dependent on our parents. We cannot survive without that. So we are loyal even beyond the point of survival, because still there is a part in us that is afraid to lose that attachment to our family. And this very, very often rules our lives. And so that's how people come into therapy, into coaching, because they are suffering from the contradiction of who they want to be and how they are unconsciously loyal to where they come from. And especially in religious cultures, this is very, very obvious. You can see it in cultures a lot where religion is dominant and dominating the lifestyle of people. And it used to be a question of survival. And in some areas it still is. And then, oops. Also, what limits us in our development into who we want to be is that many of us are dealing with unresolved traumas that are not even ours, that we don't have experienced ourselves, but that come from former generations and have been trespassed or transmitted to us. So this is another issue that we are dealing with when we work with family constellation and trauma healing. Not only the traumata that we have experienced ourselves in our own lives, let's say in early childhood or later, but also the traumata that have been passed on to us from former generations, unconsciously, of course. How can we heal? You see here, this is a circle of my students in Israel, and it was at the end of the first module of the Heal Your Roots training that started in December. And I really like this photo because it shows how can we heal. We heal with connection. Because we get traumatized by disconnection. and we heal with connection. And this was a healing circle that we did in the end of the group, and it's still in my memory as one of the most beautiful situations I have experienced, because it was just so, so loving. There is a saying that says love heals, and for me that is true. And of course we can heal through connection, and then I will talk a little bit about how the healing journey that I have developed, the Heal Your Roots work, how that is working and which methods I'm using there. Now this is about the online course, but I want to also talk a little bit about the longer trainings, because I developed this program of Heal Your Roots because I found that that there are ways to heal. Peter Levine always says trauma is a fact of life, but it does not have to be a life sentence. So I am convinced we can heal from our wounds. And one of the ways that I have found to be very, very helpful in healing is the so-called family constellations, which is a method that was developed by a man called Bert Hellinger. And it works in a way that we are looking at the hidden dynamics in our families that still influence us till today. And hidden dynamics means the things I was talking about before, the hidden loyalties, the wounds, the transmission of trauma from former generations. And we look at it in a way that we do constellations with the members of the families by using representatives who are not the real members, but they represent those members of the family, and we are putting them in relation to each other in the room. And with that, we are finding the hidden dynamics and the hidden structures within those families that might influence the person in a way that it's more damaging than supporting. Now this is, I don't want to go too much into the how does that work kind of thing, because what we know is that it works. It works through an energetic field that connects us all. And within that field, we are receiving information about the members of the family. And so we can represent those members of the family, and we can see the dynamics between them. So this is a big part of that Heal Your Roots training, and also part of the Heal Your Roots training is the life storytelling, because I believe that telling and listening to our life stories is a healing in itself. And we also use trauma healing methods like somatic experiencing and neuroaffective relational model techniques. So there is a bunch of those kinds of methods in the training, which we use over a period of 6 modules of 6 days each. So this is a whole program that I developed, and this online Heal Your Roots course is a introduction to that. So it's 10 lessons of 2 hours each, and each lesson will contain practical work. I will do in each lesson, I will do one constellation with one of the participants and then talk about it and discuss it afterwards. I will also do in each lesson, small rituals, small exercises, small meditations that you can use in your daily life. You can implant it into your daily life, and there will always be space for questions and answers, of course. So in that online course, you are going to get material which you get provided that you can use. And yeah, it's a taste of. So is the online course equivalent to in-person training? No, it's not. It's an introduction into the long training. It's not a substitute. And what do I gain from participating in the online course? Well, it gives you tools which you can already use in your personal life and in your work if you're working with people in therapy or medical professions or social worker, teacher, lawyer, and so on, coaches. And it also, this course helps you to understand more about your upbringing and how to overcome patterns that are not supportive anymore in your life now. So this is what I can promise, those things. You get tools, you get an understanding, and you get a taste of the long training. So it's very, very, I think it's very valuable. And you will see, because we studied and tried this out with my students in online format. It works online. It really does. And it's amazing how much it works and how beautiful it is. So that's what I wanted to give you now. Thank you. I love this swan. This is a swan that I found on a lake in Berlin, and I just found it so graceful. And for me, also a big part of working with this Heal Your Roots is to create resources. And for me, resources are nature, and looking at this swan makes me smile, makes me feel warm in my heart. So that's why you get this image. You also will get this PowerPoint after this webinar. And then, yeah, that's it. So I think it's time for maybe questions. If you have any questions and you want to know more, I will just look into the questions into the chat section. If there are. So if you have any questions of any kind, please feel free to ask them. Okay. Okay. So the question Shirley asks, what if I don't remember much of my childhood? I have the experience that when I do work on my childhood, I have a lot of gaps and it is difficult for me to know what happened. Could I do this work if I don't remember? Yes, you don't have to have memories of your childhood for this work at all. The family constellation works only with, you have to know who belongs to your family. And that's basically enough. So you don't need to have memories from your childhood. Okay. Shirley. So Edita, you ask what kind of therapy would you recommend to heal your roots? Which therapy is recommendable? You did already 2 or 3 times family constellations. Well, it depends what you want to work on, because I mean, mostly my recommendation is find a therapist who can work with childhood themes. I am very fond of the neuroaffective relational model because it works a lot with developmental trauma, but in the here and now. You don't need to remember anything, but you can work with what it does. Because what trauma does, it sits in our nervous system and it influences our nervous system in terms of how we respond to situations in the now. So working with the nervous system is very recommended. So somatic experiencing, NARM, all this kind of stuff is good to work on healing your roots. In what way, so Guli Matos, in what way does Osho and constellation work? Oh, disappears. Work together in your work, in workshop and in the clinic? Well, it does not touch each other. My relationship to meditation or to Osho is my very private attitude to life, but it does not influence my work with people. I am completely neutral. I have no you will never hear me saying anything about Osho or whatever religious. I respect everybody's religious or philosophical or way of living, and I keep mine to myself. So that's the answer. I hope that's. How are we connected to our ancestors? Well, first of all, we are connected to our ancestors by the genes that we got from them, because we are made from our 2 parents and they are made from their parents, and so forth and so forth. So we are carrying a lot of even cell information from our ancestors. And then there's also a memory in our nervous system, in our body, in our physical and emotional body that carries information from our ancestors, and that's how we are connected. Unresolved trauma gets passed on. Yeah, please elaborate an example. Okay, this is what we see in constellations very often. Let's say in a family, a child is developing behavioral patterns that cannot be explained by his own life experience or her own life experience. Like someone develops, I tell you a personal example of a friend. It's a Jewish friend, and this friend developed asthma, severe asthma in his life. And the same, his daughter, severe asthma. And the asthma attacks, they lasted about 20 minutes. And then he found out that one of his ancestors, an aunt, was killed in Treblinka in the gas cars. And the dying process lasted 20 minutes every time. So that trauma obviously got passed on to the next generation in the form of asthma attacks. This is only one example or we see often behavioral things that cannot be explained. And then when we look back into the generations before, then we might find someone who had similar behavior patterns, or someone who, I don't know, sometimes I have clients who feel they don't belong. And then when we go back in the ancestors' line, we find people that didn't belong, that were expelled from the system, or outcasts, or something like that. So this is how I see symptoms of transmission of trauma to next generations. I'm starting a new education in orthopedagogy in September, but I'm still very much in my own process, working on issues with my own therapist. Part of me fears I won't be able to deal with other people's problems. Still, I do believe in the power of the wounded healer. Oh, I think that no one who is a healer isn't wounded himself. This is what I see all the time. I think the more we allow our own healing of our wounds, the more we can help other people. And while you are still healing, you know your limitations, and that's the best. The best healers are those who know their limitations, who know that they don't know everything. So just trust that when you work with a person, and you work from your heart space, and you work from a good intention, that you will help them. Oh, that's a good question. If I already discovered some unsupportive, restrictive loyalties in my life through Tetra healing, how do I help resolve them, get rid of them? Well, my basic line is, first thing, we have to acknowledge that we are loyal. We have to acknowledge, say, hey, this, I see that I'm loyal to you, and I honor you, who I'm loyal to, with whoever you are, and whatever your belief system was. And then I have, very often I do this ritual of, please bless me when I do it differently. But the letting go of loyalties requires, in the first step, to acknowledge the loyalty. And also to acknowledge the goodness of the person. The goodness in the sense of, they did what they did out of good intentions. And we are loyal to them out of love. But we can still love them with doing it our own way differently, and appreciate how they did it. So it's not, people often think, oh, I have to throw it all in the garbage. No. Acknowledgement means acknowledge the otherness of the other. And letting them be who they are, and allowing myself to do it differently. But it's always both. I hope that helps a bit. Okay. That's great. She said, during my childhood, my mom would always beat me, but now that I'm a mom, I never give corporal punishment to my kids. I intentionally raised my kids in a different way from the Philippines. That's beautiful that you can do that. Because it's often like that people who are beaten, they also beat. And they seek for abusive relationships also in their lives, because they haven't been able to do it differently. how to be with family members when they are still continue to live, think and act as always and often triggers me. Well, that's a big one. I know that this is not easy. Acknowledge that you are triggered. And between being triggered and acting out, put a little stop. Notice that you're triggered. Aha, I'm triggered. Okay, let me just step back for a moment before I respond. The stop, I call it the stop meditation. For me, the stop meditation has been the biggest help in my whole life. And for many of my clients, it has been the same. And it goes like this. You notice something and you say, oh, stop, stop, just stop. Hold it for a moment. Then you notice what you're feeling, what you want to do, all your thoughts. And then you ask yourself, how do I want to act now? Do I want to act in this way or in this way or in this way? If you can't decide any, take a break, do something else. I always say, do some, I don't know what, dishwashing or some household stuff. Distract yourself from the issue for a moment. And then after a while, come back and again, notice what you want to do. So put a stop between the trigger and the act. I hope that helps a bit. A question, could you please elaborate on how the fear of intimacy can be overcome with this work? Yes. This work is very, very respectful. This work is very slow in that when we do a constellation, for instance, I give a lot of time to whatever wants to show itself or evolve. Because there is a lot of intimacy in many people, especially in people who have been physically, emotionally, sexually abused. So their connection is between intimacy is intimacy and abuse, or intimacy and being mistreated. So in order to overcome that, we have to respect that fear and not go too fast. Give time. I have a client for several years now, and every session is slow and slow and slow and slow. And it might take years. So allow yourself to be slow in approaching intimacy. Allow yourself to take the steps as little, as small as fits for you. Because nothing is worse in overcoming fear of intimacy by rushing. Rushing is the worst. So give yourself time and notice every little step that you come closer to someone. Dreams, how do they affect our life? Well, that's a whole science in itself. I deal with dreams in the way that when someone wants to share a dream with me, I always say, well, when they ask me, what does it mean to you? I always ask back, what does it mean to you? Because dreams are very personal. And I know that for myself, especially now in this Corona time, I have dreams which are very unusual and which many of them are connected with fear. And I wake up and I say, well, it makes sense. We are in a time where fear is totally natural. So dreams are, let's say, the night digestion of themes that haven't been resolved in our lives, maybe. Or sometimes it's wishes that we haven't allowed ourselves to fulfill. Many people, or many people I don't know, but people have sexual dreams. So I ask, well, what about how would you like to live some of those dreams? So that's what dreams are for me. How to heal, release anger, which bursts out occasionally due to past abuse. That's I think anger is a very, very valid emotion. And when I work with a client, what I do is I go into inquiry. I go into inquiring the anger. Yeah? How does it look like? How does it feel like? What does it want to say? What is the message? So I'm not saying anger is something that covers something else up. Anger in itself is a valid emotion. So it's good to inquire. How to overcome trust issues which is affecting married life. It depends what kind of trust issues you are talking about. For me, when there is an issue with a partner, and especially when it's about trust, it's good to talk about it, to communicate. I have this issue with you. I have a trust issue. Can we talk? Because communication sometimes is helpful. So, do you have any advice on how to find out why you get triggered by certain situations? Yeah, inquiry. Look at the situations, look at the similarities in the situations, and find the essence of those situations. Maybe it's always the same kind of situations. Inquiry. My main approach to therapy is not change it, but inquire. Be curious about it. Research it. Research every state that you are in. Be curious. I recently got trained in cognitive behavior therapy. Would like to know your thoughts on the therapy. Well, it is a very valid therapy for certain aspects in life. And it can be helpful for people. Like every therapy can be helpful for certain issues in life. There is no such thing like every method fits all. It's not true. But for particular issues in life, like for anxiety and fear issues, behavioral therapy can be helpful when also the other aspects of fear or anxiety, like underlying trauma, get addressed. But it's a good combination with some other therapies. So I would say it's good. It's a good therapy form if it's applied in the right way. So I think we are at the end, and I wanted to, first of all, thank you for being here with me and sharing this hour with me. And you can get, I was asked to announce that, if you want to join the online course, you can get a 15% discount for the next 24 hours if you book within the next 24 hours. And I would be very happy to see some of you and work with you in the next 10 weeks. So the course starts on Tuesday, 2nd June, and well, join me. I will be happy to see you there. thank you very much, and have a good weekend. For the Jewish people amongst you, Chag Sameach Shavuot, because I know you are having Shavuot right now. And I see a few of my Israeli students here. So Chag Sameach. And happy weekend for the rest of you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sakino.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Nice view.
Bye.
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 Yeah, it's from Ivo being.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you,
Thank
Sakina.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks from Evolved Beings to all of you for joining us this evening. We look
Thank
forward.
you. Thank you.
We hope to see some of you on Tuesday.